All right. Thank you, Melissa, and thank you to all of our panelists and moderators who have already spoken today. This GCIO Cloud Summit has been extremely insightful for us who are planning or actively deploying scalable, secure cloud environments for our customers and products. Our next topic, as Melissa mentioned, is what makes a good multi-cloud environment, and we hope to maintain the momentum that the previous sessions have garnered. Migrating to the cloud requires hybrid multi-cloud software, platforms, and environments. And during the next panel discussion, we're going to explore how agencies are applying different elements to their cloud solutions to improve their organization's mission. To help me with the discussion today, we have some of the top federal government and industry thought leaders in the cloud space. First, I'd like to introduce Mr. Dave Catanoso, the Director of Enterprise Cloud Solutions for the Department of Veterans Affairs. Secondly, we have Mr. Steve Grunch, the Branch Chief for Enterprise Cloud Services at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And then lastly, representing an industry perspective on this panel, we have Mr. Jose Padin, Zscaler's U.S. Public Sector Director of Sales and Engineering. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining this afternoon. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Well, happy to be here.
I'd like to start off with a business-oriented question before we talk more details about multi-cloud strategies and implementation. We can start with you, Mr. Catanoso, and then move to Mr. Grunch next. So the question is this: how has your cloud and multi-cloud strategy enabled your clients' products in supporting the organization's mission?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here. So yeah, the VA has, as you can imagine, a very large IT infrastructure. We're the second largest federal agency, and our cloud strategy started out from day one as a multi-cloud approach using Amazon and Azure. And so we've enabled our client teams or delivery teams to be able to go in and use the services from both of those providers to stand up and deliver services. We've got probably over 1,000 apps across our enterprise that at some point or another may or may not migrate to the cloud. And so we've enabled them to access both Amazon and Azure services, and then in some cases they've taken that to the next level and they're starting to containerize and refactor their applications, use microservices, and then we're looking at building a more comprehensive strategy on top of that.
Excellent. Same question for you, Mr. Grunch. How have you accelerated your organization's missions with cloud services?
Sure. So at USCIS, we've been in the cloud. We started with Amazon Web Services in 2014 and have progressed through the last 6 years to include a number of different services and applications within the AWS environment. And recently, within the last year or so, we started to move workloads into Azure as well. Most notably, the Office 365 suite is now running in Azure. We've made significant progress in getting the network connections between AWS and Azure and our own, our private network connected through ExpressRoute and Connect Direct. And we've also started to do some research and development work with some of the Google Cloud Compute services. To answer the question, though, there are three main areas which cloud has helped transform the business. The first one I would say is delivery. Using the cloud services, either AWS or Azure, we've been able to deliver new products. We've been able to deliver them at a faster pace and provide our customers which we would consider the beneficiaries of some of the immigration services. We've been able to provide them better products in a more timely way. The second piece of it is our deployment schedules. So using our DevOps frameworks and our tool chain and our business processes, we've been able to increase the way that we deploy software. We have many groups within USCIS that are doing daily production deployments using these methods. And the last piece I would say is transformation. About 2 years ago, in 2017, 2018, our new CTO began looking at a new way to design our applications and have commonality across different service components within the organization. And as part of our process of going to microservices, he developed or implemented domain-driven architecture or domain-driven design between the different services that we have within USCIS. All of those systems are running in the cloud. Most of them are using modern platforms like Kubernetes or Confluent, Kafka, etc., to do a lot of this work. And so the cloud has been instrumental in being able to deliver those services to the agency.
That's wonderful. So Dave and Steve definitely broke it down pretty well, Jose. Anything from an industry perspective that you're seeing that's really accelerated the organization's mission?
Yeah, and what's really interesting is to see the adoption of the cloud services across the government. So even if you rewind to 5 years ago, having conversations, people were still considering cloud services or just starting to move out. And really now what you've seen in, our leader from the FedRAMP PMO was on earlier, the explosion of cloud services across the government. And what that really has pointed out to is just an area around security. So what we're seeing and at Zscaler, what we're doing is to be able to help extend that security down to the cloud. So now that, there's an aspect of application layer data that are on-prem, well, what happens when all of that moves out and is in the cloud? How do you get visibility into what your users are doing? How do you see where people are accessing? If you have an abstraction layer of the service and it's running on multiple clouds, how do you know what's happening from a security policy perspective within these clouds? So there's a lot of questions that get raised as infrastructure as a service is adopted more in the federal government, as software as a service is adopted more in the federal government. Now the question around security, compliance, and visibility come to play. And that's something that Zscaler has been able to help the federal government with, is to get that visibility and to add that security where the users and the data happen to be, which today is now in the cloud.
Excellent. So let's, Dave, can we pull on that thread a little bit more from the VA's expertise? So how have enterprise cloud service offerings matured for you all over the past couple of years to support multiple cloud strategies? And what do you see some of those key elements of the evolution being?
So we started maturing our journey back in late 2017, early 2018 timeframe with the formation of our office and the establishment of the enterprise cloud. Right around that same time, our Exchange team managed to do one of the largest migrations of about 500,000 email accounts up to Office 365. So we really dove in really headfirst on the software as a service side first, and then we took a multi-cloud approach to standing up what we called launch pads or landing zones in Amazon and Azure to put that, as Steve mentioned, that basic plumbing in place, the network connectivity back and forth between the cloud networks and our on-prem networks, the basic security platform, ATO capability, leveraging security controls, some basic common tooling to give our delivery teams a place to land. And then we started migrating a series of applications up into those two clouds over time. And because of the nature of the applications, everyone took a slightly different approach. Some were more of a lift and shift. Other ones were a little more advanced and maybe started looking at containers and other things. But we gave them that flexibility to get some acceleration in the adoption of the cloud. And now we're maturing that to a more enterprise type approach. We're putting more enterprise tools in place to manage across those environments. We're putting some more standardization and governance tools in place. And we're also looking at adding a platform layer on top of that, which enable common containerization, orchestration, and ability to use a true multi-cloud, almost blur the line between our two cloud environments and our on-prem environment as well, so that we can really, for the applications that are suitable for that, really take them to the next level.
That's great. Yeah, and I think we have some time reserved here in a few minutes to talk about what are some of those common tools and processes. But I'd like to hit on the same question with Steve before we proceed. So at USCIS, how have your enterprise cloud service offerings matured over the past couple of years, and how has that evolution looked for you?
Sure. So I think a big part of it is the maturity of the services that are offered by the CSPs. There's over the last couple of years, there have been more services that are what I would call managed services. For example, most clouds today, either whether you're running in Google, Azure, or AWS, have a managed Kubernetes platform. And if you've ever managed a Kubernetes platform, you know there are difficulties in that. You spend a lot of time on day two operations trying to keep it up and monitoring it, etc. Trying to manage the control plane of the Kubernetes cluster. And so the maturity of those offerings has helped out pretty substantially in the way that we've used multi-cloud. The other thing that multi-cloud has done is offered us different platforms, if you will, for research and development. We engaged in a number of projects last year for artificial intelligence and machine learning, and we made some pretty significant insights using both Google and Amazon. The service offering within Amazon has actually been pretty beneficial for a number of our projects as well.
Great. Jose, anything to?
The other, I just want to touch on also the interconnectivity between the clouds. That has matured quite well as well. We are able to use cloud connectivity through our partners to use ExpressRoute and Connect Direct, and then tie that back into our network, our private network. And so we've made some improvements in how we go about doing that within the agency as well.
Great. Jose, any thoughts on the evolution from industry?
Yeah, and David and Steve hit on two great points. So, what we're really seeing is, if you think about the term multi-cloud, right? What does multi-cloud mean? I'm leveraging multiple clouds. Well, the flip of that is single cloud, right? And so what really happened is, as people were investigating leveraging cloud, especially infrastructure as a service, we kind of had this mindset that we had with traditional IT, which is, I'm going to buy endpoints. I'm going to go have all my vendors give me quotes, and I'm going to buy 500,000 endpoints, or I'm going to buy storage, and I'm going to standardize on one storage, or I'm going to buy servers and I'm going to standardize on one server. So that mindset was what originally was brought into cloud as government was looking. But the realization of that is, why would you ever do that? Today, especially, Steve pointed out, there's amazing things that are going on and what you can do from an AI perspective in some of these clouds, where there's an advantage that you want to use for your agency. Other clouds may specialize in different technology, and there are other reasons why you want to use that. So really, the realization is, single cloud was never a real long-term strategy. Multi-cloud is the strategy for the government going forward. It's not really a debate. So being able to take that into consideration, look at technologies that can be able to prevent locking you in. There's a lot of ways that vendors are trying to bring you into cloud services only provided by one. But look at open API infrastructure. Look at the ability to support multiple different layers of infrastructure. Look at multiple layers of containerization and how you can support that, because multi-cloud is the way that the federal government will consume the cloud going forward.
Absolutely. Good points, gentlemen. So I think we've hit on a few of the common tools or processes to employ and promote multi-cloud environments. Are there any others, Dave, that you'd like to highlight?
Sure. So in addition to putting the container orchestration platform in place, we're also looking at things like governance tools, cost management tools. AI ops is a big trend in our organization to try to bring in automation of event and incident management, and alerting and monitoring is important. So those are all key areas that work. And of course, the security tools are key. I mean, we have maintained a FedRAMP High environment in all of our clouds. And so, it's critical to us to secure veteran data. So security tools and security monitoring, in addition to, third-party tools that we're using heavily to manage across the clouds. Within each cloud, we're using the cloud native tools that Steve mentioned. Both Amazon and Azure have a whole suite of native tools and services that they make available. Where it makes sense, we're leveraging those too. So each cloud is operating, as it's designed to operate, by the CSP.
Yeah, Steve, you mentioned a number of common tools and processes, AWS and Azure native tools for your AI work. Anything else you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, so I think if you want to do successful multi-cloud within an agency or even within a private company, there are a few processes that I think are critically important. One of them is centralized governance, right? You have a governing body, whether that's your enterprise architecture board, a technical review board. You have a centralized governing body that determines, which cloud environments you're going to use, how things are going to be procured, and those decisions are made from a central point. So the way that your agency is organized can help facilitate that, whether that's through your infrastructure division or whatever. The centralized governance is a big part of that. Along with the governance is also centralized procurement decisions. So the way that we did our cloud contracts here at USCIS, no matter what cloud that you decide to go to, all of the contracting and the procurement of those services are done through a single contract, at least on the infrastructure side. The labor side is a different, is organized much differently for different reasons, but we've centralized our ability to procure any cloud CSP from an infrastructure perspective, such as IaaS, through a single contract vehicle. The other pieces that David was talking about, having common DevOps platforms, a common tool set that is used across all of the clouds is also important. And then the cost, and then your ability to collect cost information across all three clouds has been critically important for us as well.
Thanks, Steve. Jose, anything to add on common tools and processes for multi-cloud?
Yeah, and a couple points. So if we think about what happens when you use multiple clouds, right? There, especially it looks like there's a lot of conversation around infrastructure as a service and application tier, right? So I have applications and they're leveraged in multiple different clouds. How do the users get access to that? So when we move up the stack to kind of the user being able to get access to the application, we need to think about that in our strategy. So there are ways that we can create access methods. And so one of those tools is a zero trust security platform that can allow users the ability to get access to the applications wherever they may be hosted, whether they're in, infrastructure as a service, GA, AW, or on-prem, whatever it happens to be. That place that a user will always go to and connect into the application as it's defined in a zero trust perspective. And then on the back end of that system, you can define wherever that application wants to live. So it makes it easier for you to abstract the infrastructure where the applications are tiered from the user so that you can leverage multi-cloud. So if you want to move to a different cloud tomorrow, you can do that. The users don't have to be part of that migration plan. There doesn't have to be a communication that goes out to the user base saying, now here's how you get access to your app because we move something on the back end. We want to make that as seamless as possible and as secure as possible. So when you're moving up the stack and looking at the application tier, there's some tools to do that. And I think a zero trust security platform is critical in that. And then just when it comes down to some of the ways that we can look at the actual security of the users that are being applied across this, wherever they happen to be, there's ways that you can make sure that you get that visibility into what's happening as well, because that sometimes is a challenge or an area that's lost. If you have your tooling set up in one cloud to be able to see what's happening from an instrumentation perspective, or from a security compliance perspective, it can sometimes be a challenge to move to other clouds. So looking at tools that create that ability to get visibility to security across clouds, that's a great thing to think about, and do it up front, where it's not a bolt-on at the end after you get down into these application migrations and leveraging the multi-cloud up front.
Yeah, great points. So, I think we've all talked about how platforms, containerizations, and private clouds do play into the multi-cloud strategy. Obviously we wouldn't be on this session together if that weren't the case, and you've all exhibited some of those elements within your answers here today. But Steve, can you break it down into layman's terms? When you're talking to your CIO, how these all play together with each other.
So first, our strategy at USCIS is a container-first strategy. When we build new applications within the agency, or when we start transforming services, we're looking at doing that on a container platform. The way that multi-cloud has helped with that is that today, if we want to deploy a Kubernetes cluster to any of the cloud environments, all of the clouds providers make that pretty easy for us to do. If we want to manage Kubernetes cluster in any of them, we can stand it up. There are tools out there also that if we want to stand up, commercial clusters such as OpenShift or other products, we can do that pretty easily as well. And it gives us some pretty good capabilities, taking advantage of cost, of data locality, and also any specialized services that exist within those cloud environments. So it kind of goes back to we're using multi-cloud to deliver best-in-class products, expedited delivery back out to our customers, and transformation of these different business processes, and each cloud offers us capabilities to do that.
Dave, any input on this question?
Well, sure. I'll just double down on what Steve said. I mean, IT modernization and digital transformation are a big part of VA's strategy going forward, and our main focus is delivering innovative services and accelerating our rate of innovation to get services to veterans and our staff members that serve veterans directly. So we're taking advantage of all that these cloud platforms and even our on-prem infrastructure has to offer, whether it's cloud native services and more importantly, containerization is becoming a focus for that. And Steve already kind of covered how easy that's becoming, how easy it is to do these days with the different tools that are available. We're definitely moving that, and we're also moving in a DevSecOps direction where we're moving more agilely, or we're moving oriented to a product line management approach. We're making a lot of changes in parallel as part of our modernization effort, all focused around the goal of innovation and delivery of services to veterans and securing their data, of course. So that's really how I would explain it, or when we talk to our CIO and our senior leadership. We've been really blessed at the VA that we've had a great senior leadership team that's kind of set the strategy and has given us the air cover we need to move forward in the direction. And I think that's key to any organization that's trying to do that. In addition to the central organization that Steve mentioned, you need a good leadership team that's championing the event, because organizational change and technology change is difficult. And if you have good leadership and direction, it helps make it a little easier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Jose, you hit on two really good elements of platforms, containerization, private clouds with regard to zero trust security and visibility across that. Any other main points you'd like to make?
Yeah, and again, this is great to see the federal government go down this path. CI/CD, continuous improvement, continuous development, is a strategy that helps us remain innovative. So the VA, driving towards innovation and adopting this methodology is critical. The one thing that we see happen, and I would recommend anyone looking, to go down this path from a containerization, is, first of all, yes, use containerization. It's a great technology. It's gonna create that abstraction from the infrastructure as a service, tons of flexibility. But misconfiguration of the container, this is where a lot of exploit happens. So if you think about from a FedRAMP perspective, at Zscaler, we have 3 cloud services that have FedRAMP. There's a lot that goes into making sure that our services are compliant and a third-party accreditation along that. But when the government rolls out infrastructure as a service, there's not always that same third-party accreditation and inspection of all the changes that are happening. So it's important to understand, one, that when you move to containerization, your security model is now dynamic. You will be making changes, and they will not be the same changes in a traditional world where you could go through 3-6 months of change management in order to do that. They're going to happen continuously. So how do you grasp that? You need to think about that up front. And there are tools and there are ways out there that can allow you to scan those environments to make sure that they're compliant with your needs, to make sure they're compliant from accreditation perspective, and that can give you that third-party validation that a misconfiguration in a CI/CD environment won't create an exploit for your agency. That's something that we want to try to avoid ahead of time. So it's really important to think about that as well as you're moving down that path. Not a reason not to, because the technology is well developed, right? The commercial and enterprise world are standardized around a lot of these tools. So bringing this into the federal government, allowing the federal government to reap the rewards of this innovation is critical. But think about it from a cloud security compliance perspective as well, and leverage that layer and those tools to be able to help the agencies move forward.
Yeah, all good points. So folks, we're coming to the last couple of minutes of our time on this session. I just wanted to ask one final question for our government panelists here. I know at Department of Veterans Affairs, we've been instilling the DevSecOps culture. And one of those tenets is really fail early, fail often, iterate, continue. So we've talked a lot about some of our successes here with our multi-cloud strategy, but we can start with you, Dave. Have there been any challenges your organization has faced when planning for and deploying this multi-cloud strategy, and how have you addressed them?
Sure. So you can imagine it's a very complex endeavor to try to move forward here. We had some challenges in the early days figuring out how to do the acquisitions and put the right infrastructure or acquisition structures in place to get the cloud capacity on contract, how to structure that versus the labor contracts that we have, and also we leverage our actual VA staff to do the work, right? And training, organizational change, all those things are difficult. I mean, some of the things we're dealing with now, we've kind of matured past that. I'd say some of the things we're looking at now as a challenge are how to really determine which applications are best suited for that modernization, containerization, really refactoring, and other ones that maybe are maybe just replatforming or maybe stay on-prem, right? Going through that rationalization of applications is the next level of maturity we're moving toward. I think that's probably one of the biggest things, and determining where to host them, which platform particularly. We want to make that as transparent as possible, or not transparent to the customer. Then they shouldn't care where we host it. The IT team should be able to figure out where an application is hosted, and the customer should get great service, and it shouldn't really matter whether they're in our container environment, a regular cloud, or on-prem environment. It should really be good quality service regardless of where they're delivered from. Absolutely.
Same question to you, Steve.
Yeah, I think for us, so governance was a kind of a challenge for us in the beginning as we started to integrate more clouds into our environment. I think we have a pretty good handle on that now, but like has been mentioned in the call, having good leadership at the top, from the CIO down, to the actual implementation, the team leads that run the implementation teams, kind of all binding together, having good communication channels throughout the environment has helped tremendously in the governance area. And I would say the other area that we kind of experienced a challenge and we're able to get control of it was just spending money in the cloud. The different delivery teams come with different skill sets. When applications are moved to the cloud, they don't all migrate the same way. There's different migration strategies that occur. But at the end of the day, what we've learned is that you can't just migrate something to the cloud and say you're done, right? It is a continuous evolutionary process. Keep that thing running as efficiently as possible, and to continue to look at ways to make it operate more efficiently, no matter what cloud it's in.
Yeah.
And I'd say the last piece, and this is still kind of a challenge for us, but whenever you go to select a cloud to run a workload, you really have to look at the data that's generated from that application and where that data is going to go once it's generated. If you have data let's say is bound to an application in Azure, and you have another application in AWS or back in your data center that needs to consume that data, you have data egress issues going on between the different cloud environments, and just being able to manage that, being able to determine where the best location for the data is and where the best location for the applications that are consume that data is really something that needs to be thought about ahead of time.
Great. Well, gentlemen, this has been a very enriching discussion. I thank you all three for such a great discussion, sharing your insights and successes and lessons learned for your multi-cloud strategies and deployment. Thank you so much again for your time today. At this point, I'm going to hand it back over to my government CIO colleague, Mike Hoffman, to help us wrap up the Cloud Summit.